the ceasefire is officially over. Just days ago, Draymond Green didn't just throw shade, he launched a tactical missile straight at Jordan Poole's reputation, calling him out for abandoning Jose Alvarado in the trenches during that absolute bloodbath with Mark Williams. Listen to me clearly. If I'm in the heat of battle, fists flying, and I look back to see my squad doing times this asterisk, oh, hell no. That is absolutely unacceptable in this league. You cannot leave your brother on an island like that. Pushed to the edge after months of silence, Poole finally broke. No publicist, no script. He pulled up on Instagram Live, staring down the barrel of the camera lens, ready to confront the noise head on. This wasn't a curated press release. This was raw, unfiltered hostility broadcast in real time. Millions watched, holding their breath, witnessing the kind of receipts you simply can't fake. And just like that, the dormant volcano erupted. You see, most NBA beefs are just smoke flashy headlines that vanish by the morning news cycle. But this is different. This is deep-seated, toxic, and rooted in a betrayal so profound it haunts the franchise to this day. It's a powder keg that never truly went cold. And the moment Draymond struck that match, the entire sports world froze, glued to the spectacle of the league's most volatile rivalry, tearing open fresh wounds. But to get the full picture of this train wreck, we have to trace the fuse back to the spark. Draymond took to the airwaves on the Draymond Green Show and didn't just drop a comment, he dropped a bomb. Fans immediately clocked it as a precision airstrike aimed squarely at his former teammate. There was nothing accidental about it. It felt surgical, cold, designed to inflict maximum damage exactly when the NBA community was already reeling from a chaotic on-court brawl that spiraled out of control. Let's take you back to the crime scene. December 27th, 2025, the New Orleans Pelicans versus the Phoenix Suns. The scoreboard read 123-114 for Phoenix, but frankly, by the final buzzer, the basketball was completely irrelevant. Third quarter tension boiled over. Jose Alvarado and Mark Williams didn't just exchange pleasantries. They crossed the line from physical play into straight-up hostility. It turned into a war zone instantly. Trash talk turned to shoving, shoving turned to swinging, and suddenly, the court was a mosh pit of aggression. Then came the moment that shattered the internet. Jose Alvarado, barely 6 feet tall, cocked back and fired a savage uppercut straight into the jaw of the 7'1" giant Mark Williams. The sheer audacity of that size mismatch turned the clip into global news within seconds. It was David versus Goliath, but with real punches. Referees lost their minds, ejections were immediate. Alvarado got slapped with a 2-game suspension, Williams sat for 1, but the league office was scrambling. Yet, if you looked past the fist flying, the real controversy was lurking in the background. Standing amidst the anarchy was none other than Jordan Poole. And his reaction? Absolute zero. No movement, no instinct, just void. The high-definition replay is damning. Poole looks statuesque, eyes wide with terror, arms glued to his sides like a man witnessing a crime scene he wants no part of. That look of total paralysis, it wasn't just fear, it was meme fuel. Deer in the headlights doesn't even begin to cover it. I'm telling you right now, if I'm throwing hands and I see my brother standing there doing that, nah. That's a violation of the brotherhood. We cannot have that. And that is exactly where Draymond Green smelled blood in the water. He clicked record on the podcast and unleashed a monologue about loyalty that cut deeper than any knife. He didn't need to utter the name Jordan Poole. The target on his back was painted in neon lights for the whole world to see. The condescending tone, the impeccable timing, the viral footage, it was a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. David West, a real OG, used to drill this into our heads. Man, if chaos breaks out on that floor, you get your body over there immediately, because you never know how bad it's going to get. I'm not saying you need to throw a haymaker or catch a charge, but your presence is mandatory. You have to stand tall because the situation is unpredictable. What happens when 5 of them surround your one guy? What then? You're just going to watch him get mauled? Is that the teammate you want to be? But hold on, because here is where the narrative twists into pure insanity. The irony here is so thick you could choke on it. This is Draymond Green, the man responsible for the sucker punch heard round the world lecturing the very victim of his own violence about stepping in during a fight. You can't write a script this twisted. The internet didn't just react, it imploded. Twitter turned into a battlefield instantly. The comment sections were absolutely ruthless, scorching Draymond for a level of hypocrisy that borders on delusional. Half the world argued Poole was suffering PTSD flashbacks from that practice facility punch, while the other half claimed he was the only genius in the room for staying far away from the violence. From savage memes to serious video essays on toxic masculinity and locker room codes, everyone had a theory. But let's be crystal clear about one thing. The war between Draymond Green and Jordan Poole is far from finished. This is the NBA's darkest reality show. It's a collision of massive egos, shattered pride, and a history that refuses to be buried. Like David West preached, if your brother is in the fire, you walk into the fire. Now, I gotta walk a tightrope, right? Because given my rap sheet, if I jump into the mix, things escalate quickly. I know my reputation, so I have to balance that aggression. But at the end of the day, you have to be there. There is no excuse. What makes this entire situation mind-boggling is the timeline. Draymond threw this verbal jab mere weeks after publicly confessing that destroying his relationship with Poole was his biggest failure as a leader. So to pivot from an apology tour to mocking the kid for freezing up in a brawl, it left the audience with severe whiplash. It wasn't just shady, it was baffling. Fans started asking the real questions. Is this psychological warfare? Is he intentionally twisting the knife to see if Poole bleeds? But to fully grasp the radioactive fallout of this single podcast clip, we have to peel back the layers of the past. Make no mistake, this isn't about some random flare-up or a throwaway joke you scroll past on Twitter. This is the brutal final act of a saga years in the making. What is unfolding right before our eyes is the violent climax of shattered trust, unspoken resentment, and deep psychological wounds that never stood a chance of healing. This beef didn't just spawn out of thin air. It is unfinished business, a ghost from the past haunting them both, tracing back to the glory days when everything in Golden State felt untouchable. To understand the hatred, you have to understand the love that came first. Before the chaos, there was a genuine, blood-thick bond between Draymond Green and Jordan Poole. It was built on the sacred code of mentorship and the hunger for a ring. When Poole got drafted in 2019, he didn't just walk into the Warriors organization. He made a deliberate, calculated choice. He walked straight into that locker room and planted his flag right next to Draymond Green. Think about that. He could have sat anywhere, faded into the background. Instead, he chose the spot beside the loudest, most volatile voice in the arena, the four-time champ, the heartbeat of the dynasty. That was a statement. Poole was hungry. He wanted to absorb every ounce of game from the man who had seen the mountaintop, the enforcer who never bit his tongue. That decision screamed respect. It showed he honored Draymond's grind, his IQ, his leadership, and for a fleeting moment in history, that dynamic worked like absolute magic. Fast forward to the 2021-2022 season, and the chemistry was undeniable. Poole was calling Draymond Big Bro, swearing to the media that their connection was 100% authentic, raw, and real. You saw it in the game flow. Green was setting those bone-crushing screens, carving out space, and Poole was pulling up from the logo, putting defenders in a blender. They were moving on a string, operating with the kind of telepathy you usually only see from vets who have shared the floor for a decade. Draymond was all in. He went on his own podcast, hyping Poole up to the world, breaking down how the kid was evolving, reading coverages, and manipulating pace like a seasoned general. It was poetry in motion, a perfect passing of the torch. This was the exact mentorship dynamic that made the Golden State juggernaut unstoppable. Off the floor, it was nothing but love and jabs. Draymond, bleeding Michigan State green, lived to roast Poole for being a Michigan Wolverine rival. On his show in April 2022, Draymond cracked a smile and said, Jordan, as we all know, went to that school down the highway from Michigan State University. He wouldn't even say the name. He laughed and said, I absolutely hated him. But you could hear the affection in his voice. It was classic locker room banter, no venom, just competitive fire. That is how tight they were. They were family. Everything was firing on all cylinders. Brotherhood, chemistry, the promise of another banner hanging in the rafters. The Warriors tore through the 2022 season, and Poole wasn't just a role player, he was a supernova, dropping 18.5 a night and looking like the heir apparent to the Splash Brothers. Together, the mentor and the apprentice dragged the Warriors to their fourth title in 8 years. The vibes weren't just good, they were stratospheric. The future was locked, the dynasty was reloaded, it was paradise in the Bay, but then came October 2022, and in a split second, paradise burned to the ground. It happened during a preseason practice. The air got too thin, the tension boiled over, and Draymond Green didn't just push Jordan Poole, he launched a vicious punch straight to his face. We aren't talking about a scrum or a little shoving match. This was a haymaker. And then the video leaked, and the brutality of it hit the internet like a bomb. Frame by frame, the entire world watched Draymond, the big bro, the protector, cross a line so sacred it could never, ever be uncrossed. What happens in the practice facility is supposed to stay in the bloodline. Instead, it became global breaking news. This wasn't just assault, it was a betrayal captured in high definition. Suddenly, everyone knew the dirty secret. Years of trust, mentorship, and brotherhood evaporated in seconds, leaving nothing but smoke. That right hook didn't just end a friendship. It fractured the very soul of the Warriors' locker room, cracking the foundation from the inside out. You can issue apologies, release PR statements, and try to spin the narrative, but you can't unring a bell that loud. It was over. The mentor morphed into the villain overnight. The student, once loyal to the soil, turned ice cold. Basketball was secondary now. This was purely, bitterly personal. Steve Kerr didn't mince words. He looked the media in the eye and called it the biggest crisis he had ever faced in his entire tenure. He knew the gravity of the situation. Kerr later admitted the truth that no one wanted to hear. The leaked video did more damage than the fist itself. He confessed that it shattered the team's chemistry so thoroughly that the Warriors never truly got back on their feet. There was some trust lost, he said, and you could hear the defeat in his voice. He talked about needing to get back to a trusting environment, knowing full well that trust had been executed on live tape. Coming from a legend who navigated them through injuries, superstar egos, and intense drama, those words were a death knell. Kerr didn't try to sugarcoat the disaster. He said it was the angriest he had ever been at Draymond Green. The punch wasn't a mistake, it was a catastrophe. It crossed a boundary that made the entire season feel like a funeral march. Draymond himself admitted, "By February, I started to feel like myself against the speed of the game." But the damage was done. He realized there were 5 months of a season where slippage had been occurring every single day. And in this league, by February, if you've been slipping that long, you can't flip a switch. You are who you are. You've built those habits. You've cemented the dysfunction. That is your identity now. And deep down, Draymond knew he had created a monster. He openly admitted the hardest truth of all. After that day, his voice, his greatest weapon as a leader, was effectively silenced. When he tried to check teammates, the words fell flat. His authority was hollowed out. His influence was muted. The king had lost his crown. The locker room energy shifted, replaced by a weird, suffocating silence where camaraderie used to live. Draymond pulled back, becoming a ghost of the fiery motivator he used to be. And that silence, that gap in leadership, it bled the team dry. Kerr even tried to play peacemaker, practically begging Green to take Poole out to dinner, to just sit down and fix it. But Draymond never made the call. Not once. Every single day that ticked by without a word didn't just create distance. It dug a canyon between them, fueling a silence that screamed louder than any argument ever could. What should have been a simple man-to-man fix spiraled into an icy, undeclared civil war right inside the sanctuary of their own locker room, shattering the chemistry they spent years building. Look, in this game, patience isn't just a virtue. It's a requirement. You have to step up, swallow your pride, and actually be the big homie in the room when it counts. You have to absorb some of that heat. Absolutely. That is part of the job description. But real leadership, that is pulling a guy to the side, looking him in the eye for a private one-on-one, not humiliating him in front of the whole squad. That is where the real respect is earned. The 2022 to 2023 season stands as undeniable evidence that a single split second of unchecked violence can haunt a franchise, rotting it from the inside out. Golden State finished 44-38, a pathetic shadow of their championship pedigree, and they got absolutely bullied out of the second round by the Lakers in embarrassing fashion. Jordan Poole, the man who was supposed to be the future face of the franchise, looked like a hollow shell of himself, a ghost wandering the court with his swagger completely stripped away. We are talking 10.3 points on a dismal 34% shooting by Game 4. He was practically benched 10 measly minutes, 0 makes, and 2 turnovers that screamed panic. It was agonizing to witness, especially knowing the heights he had reached just a year prior. you have to ask the dangerous question. Are the Warriors still playing in June if that nightmare with Poole never happens? I absolutely believe that. When you look at the talent, the fact of the matter is simple. Nobody could touch us. I genuinely don't think there was a team on the planet that could beat us. And I know we just lost, but the talent wasn't the issue. When the press finally cornered Poole about his relationship with Draymond after the season collapsed, his answer was chilling in its simplicity. It is just business. And honestly, that is all that was left. No anger, no passion, no fire, just a flat, cold transaction where a brotherhood used to be. A bond that was once electric and genuine had calcified into icy professionalism. The brotherhood was dead, buried, and suffocated by that singular, unforgivable moment of betrayal. Then came July 2023, the earthquake. The trade that didn't just move a player, but severed the timeline completely. Jordan Poole was packed up and shipped to the Washington Wizards for Chris Paul. A move that screamed one thing. The dynasty was protecting its old guard and sacrificing its future to do it. The young phenom who was instrumental in delivering that 2022 ring was gone, exiled in silence like he was the problem all along. At his introductory presser in D.C., when asked if he had heard a peep from Draymond, Poole didn't even dignify it with words. He just stared a blank, awkward silence that roared louder than any trash talk ever could. There has obviously been massive chatter about Draymond going all the way back to the preseason incident. Even in the postseason, people were adamant that it destroyed the season's chemistry. So, what is your raw perspective on how much that punch actually wrecked the year, and where do you stand with him now? Yeah, look, we are in Washington now. Next question. Days later, the final severing of ties. He unfollowed Draymond on social media, a modern-day digital execution that hit with more force than any official press release. Even Steve Kerr couldn't hide the discomfort, admitting the trade felt wrong, especially after Poole had poured his blood, sweat, and tears into the franchise. But make no mistake, the organization sent a ruthless message. They chose Draymond Green over Jordan Poole. They sided with the veteran voice and the championship DNA, even if that voice was the one that crossed the line and shattered the locker room. Poole was left in the rubble to rebuild his reputation alone, carrying the physical and mental scars of a betrayal that questioned what could have been if the punch never landed. Once the dust settled, Draymond went right back to doing the only thing Draymond knows how to do, talking. Throughout 2024 and bleeding into 2025, he went on a media blitz, reflecting on the incident and branding it as one of his absolute biggest failures as a veteran leader. But was this genuine soul-searching or calculated PR damage control? The fan base was torn. Was he actually sorry or just trying to salvage his crumbling public image? Was he keeping it real or just spinning the narrative? And I will say, I kind of got thrust into a veteran role before I was truly ready to handle the weight of it, before I knew what it took. And I failed miserably. I mean, one of my most catastrophic failures as a vet was exactly what went down with Jordan Poole. In a bombshell October 2024 interview with Mark J. Spears, Green got unusually raw, admitting that the punch didn't just hurt Poole, it fundamentally broke him too. He stopped bonding with the guys, stopped those critical off-court hangouts that used to be the secret sauce of Golden State's magic. He pointed the finger at three factors: focusing on his family, being an aging vet who had seen it all, and the crushing, lingering awkwardness from the Poole situation. He admitted it changed absolutely everything about the team's dynamic. He confessed to missing the brotherhood, that electric connection that used to fuel his fire. But by the time he realized it, the clock had already run out. The trust, the telepathic connection, the championship spirit that powered the Warriors dynasty, it had already fractured beyond repair. No podcast apology or late-night reflection could glue the pieces back together. The dynasty took a fatal hit, not from an enemy, but from within. And this time, it wasn't an opponent trying to take the crown. It was an inside job. Draymond's confession painted a brutal picture of a man finally staring at the wreckage his own hands, created careers altered, chemistry evaporated, and trust incinerated. And it took going through that public failure with Jordan Poole for him to finally understand the cost. He walked in as a rookie, wide-eyed and hungry, planting his flag right next to mine because he viewed me as the blueprint to greatness. This was a kid I was supposed to mold, a brother I was supposed to protect, and instead, I completely destroyed that bond. I have taken plenty of losses, but betraying that trust, that stands alone as the single most haunting failure of my entire career. But just when the dust seemed to settle, January 2025 rolled around, and the tension didn't just return, it detonated. January 18th, 2025. The date was circled on every calendar. Jordan Poole finally stepped back onto the hardwood at the Chase Center, but the colors were all wrong. He marched in wearing Washington Wizard threads, and you could cut the tension with a knife. The crowd was on edge, cameras were locked in, and Poole unleashed a cold-blooded masterpiece of revenge. He went absolutely nuclear, dropping 38 points, finishing just a single bucket shy of shattering his personal best. The man was unconscious, draining 12 of 25 from the field and raining fire from deep, sinking 8 of 15 three-pointers. Every shot was a statement. Every gesture screamed dominance. And even though the Warriors scraped by with a 122-114 victory, the scoreboard didn't matter. Poole wasn't chasing a win in the standings that night. He was out there headhunting for something far more valuable. His respect. The buzzer sounded, and the media swarm descended, desperate to know exactly what was going through his head seeing the dynasty he left behind. Poole didn't flinch. He looked dead into the lens and delivered a line so sharp it drew blood without leaving a scratch. Yeah, I got love for those guys. I love most of those guys over there. Solid group, great staff, honestly. And the fans? Shout out to Dub Nation. Saw a ton of JP3 jerseys in the stands, which is always dope to see. That love never fades. But that one word most hit the internet like a bomb, instantly confirming what everyone suspected but nobody wanted to say out loud. He didn't need to utter Draymond Green's name. The silence around it was louder than a shout, a surgical strike wrapped in a casual sentence. The clip tore through social media, and within minutes, the entire NBA ecosystem was dissecting the beef all over again. The next morning, ESPN's Mark J. Spears amplified the quote on X, and suddenly, Draymond Green emerged from the shadows with a reply that stopped everyone cold. I really am sorry. 4 simple words. No defense, no spin, just a raw admission that left the basketball world stunned. Chaos ensued. Was this a genuine moment of vulnerability from the league's toughest enforcer, or was it a calculated PR move to stop the bleeding? The shift was so drastic that people legitimately questioned if Draymond had been hacked, because this level of humility felt completely alien. But the drama was just getting started, because, Draymond couldn't leave it at just a tweet. Following that electric performance, Poole drops the most of those guys line, and you fire back with, I really am sorry, talk about adding fuel to the fire. I really am sorry. Laughter. Why break the silence? 4 days later, on January 22nd, Draymond took to his own show with Baron Davis to drag the skeleton out of the closet. He attempted to unpack the tweet, blending apology with exhaustion, clearly tired of being the villain in a story that refuses to die. It was a messy cocktail of regret and annoyance, as if he was pleading with the public to finally let the past stay buried. I hit send because, look, it's been 3 years. Enough is enough. We need to turn the page. Where is the love, man? We supposedly moved on, but it keeps coming back. I meant it. I really am sorry. But honestly, laughter, that statement he made, it felt like he was fishing for sympathy, It feels like people want to keep painting me as this monster. Move on, bro. It happened. It is what it is. I'm sorry. I messed up. I never should have thrown that punch. But why are we still talking about this? This birthed what the internet dubbed the apology loop. Every time he said sorry, he followed it with a justification that just restarted the fire. You can't call a grown man the B word, shove him, and expect nothing to happen. That's not how the world works. I'm stuck in the middle. Yeah, I was wrong, but let's keep it a buck. The truth is somewhere between his side and mine. I shouldn't have knocked him cold. If I could redo it, I should have just grabbed him up, hemmed him up tight. It was instinct, a natural reaction. Looking back, I probably should have just stood him up, checked him, and left it there. Then, Draymond dropped a bombshell that shifted the conversation from basketball beef to serious family business. He confessed to contacting Poole's parents directly, admitting that the war of words with Poole's father on social media had crossed a sacred line. He described it as getting off his square, a moment of weakness where he let the noise drag him down into the mud. Dragging families into the mix took this from a locker room skirmish to a deep-seated feud that felt impossible to fix. But the NBA scriptwriters weren't done. Fast forward to June 2025, And Jordan Poole was packing his bags yet again. Washington shipped him off to the New Orleans Pelicans, swapping him for CJ McCollum and Kelly Olynyk in a blockbuster move. The trade sent shockwaves through the league, but the biggest surprise came from the unlikeliest source, Draymond Green himself. Instead of reigniting the feud, he pivoted on his podcast, saying, "I actually like the move. Jordan's story isn't finished yet. I don't think we've seen the best of him yet." Those words rang out like a peace treaty. Draymond actually praised the Pelicans, calling them a rock-solid organization under Joe Dumars and Coach Willie Green. He practically guaranteed that Poole was going to explode alongside heavy hitters like Zion Williamson and Herb Jones. It felt different. It was a shock to the system. For a fleeting moment, it actually felt sincere. For a split second, you could almost believe Draymond had turned the page, that he was finally ready to bury the hatchet and let the past die. The entire fan base let out a breath, thinking this toxic saga had finally reached its endgame. After all the hollow apologies, the awkward silences, and the endless back and forth, it looked like both sides were ready to walk away. But peace? In this league? That was never going to last. Just 6 months later, in December of 2025, the truce shattered. Draymond threw himself right back into the fire. During the commentary on the Alvarado and Mark Williams fight, he couldn't help himself. He took another shot at Jordan Poole, mocking him on live air. And just like that, boom, the feud reignited, hotter than ever. We are right back where we started, full circle in a nightmare loop. Two former brothers in arms, now locked in a never-ending death spiral of cheap jabs, heavy subtext, and podcast commentary that simply refuses to die. This is the NBA's longest-running Cold War, fought one tweet, one quote, and one arrogant smirk at a time. Hey, come on, man. So, I know Lon was over there cracking up that Jose was beating up Mark Williams because you were big, man. You know, you gotta do better. I was a little surprised, but it was funny. But beneath the laughter, what makes this twisted dynamic so fascinating is the massive, uncomfortable question it screams at us. Can forgiveness actually exist in a world dominated by massive pride and fragile egos? Draymond has claimed time and time again that the punch was the single greatest failure of his leadership career. He's gone on an apology tour across every platform imaginable, podcasts, interviews, social media blasts. He admitted it destroyed his reputation, fractured his relationships, and silenced his voice as a veteran leader. Yet somehow, even after all that supposed self-reflection, he just can't keep Jordan Poole's name out of his mouth. He keeps dropping subtle references, tiny venomous comments, picking at the scab just enough to remind the world that this wound is still wide open and bleeding. Is it guilt? Is it ego? Or is it just Draymond being Draymond, too competitive to lose, too outspoken to shut up, and too proud to ever let the story fade into the dark? It taught me a ton. It showed me how to be a better vet for Jonathan Kuminga, how to be a better vet for the Moses Moody's. But I had to go through that hell in order to learn, and like I said, it sucked. Now, look at Jordan Poole. For his part, he's played the game with ice in his veins, keeping it mostly classy. On the surface, he's taken the high road, refusing to drown in the drama publicly. But don't be fooled. Everyone knows the scars are still there, deep and permanent. But every once in a while, the mask slips. He'll drop a razor-sharp comment like that legendary "most of those guys" line that cut deep. It was a calm, chilling reminder that he hasn't forgotten a damn thing. Whenever reporters corner him about the incident, P handles it like a seasoned pro. No ranting, no visible bitterness, just dead-focused eyes and clipped answers. He's made it crystal clear his energy is locked on his current squad and his future, not the chaos rotting in the rearview mirror. But you can feel it. Under that carefully controlled exterior, the memories are simmering, ready to boil over into rage if anyone dares to poke that wound one more time. You're not normally supposed to punch a guy who's an integral part of your championship and your title hopes. You could have broken this boy's jaw. So that lets me know this is more than a little personal. Watching this latest chapter explode, it is painfully obvious that this feud isn't done. It's not even close to finished. The Draymond Green and Jordan Poole saga has mutated into one of the wildest, most volatile storylines the NBA has ever witnessed. Every single time they share a court, every time Draymond drops a new podcast rant or Poole gives a cryptic quote, the internet lights up. We're dissecting every word, every sideways glance, every shadow of a post. What started as a brotherhood, a mentor and mentee bond built on trust and admiration has twisted into one of the most complicated, emotionally charged rivalries in basketball history. And whether they like it or not, the world cannot look away. This isn't just basketball anymore. It's about pride, history, and dangerous unfinished business. The real question keeping everyone up at night is what happens next? Because one thing is for damn sure, this story is not over, and the next explosive chapter could drop any day now. If you're hooked on this breakdown, smash that like button, subscribe right now, share this video, and drop your rawest thoughts in the comments below. I'll catch you on the next one. Don't blink.